Kyle Hoomer thought he had it all figured out, until the night he walked into Seattle's most exclusive restaurant with his new girlfriend and came face to face with the woman whose heart he'd shattered 3 years ago. Only this time, his ex wasn't serving tables. She was running the entire establishment, and she was visibly pregnant. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Kyle Hoomer adjusted the collar of his charcoal Armani blazer as the valet opened the door of his silver Tesla Model S. The crisp October air of downtown Seattle carried the scent of salt water from Elliott Bay, mixing with the aroma of expensive perfumes and cologne from the well-dressed patrons entering Luminaire, the city's most coveted dining destination. At 38, Kyle had climbed to the top of the tech investment world. As CEO of Hoomer Capital Ventures, he built a reputation for identifying unicorn startups before anyone else noticed them. His portfolio included 3 companies that had gone public in the last 2 years alone, making him one of Forbes' 40 Under 40 and a fixture at Seattle's power circles. Tonight marked 4 months with Brianna Westfield, the elegant tech attorney he'd met at a venture capital conference in San Francisco. Brianna emerged from the passenger side in a stunning burgundy dress that complemented her blonde hair, styled in a sleek low bun. "This place has a 6-month wait list," Brianna said, linking her arm through Kyle's as they approached the entrance. "How did you manage to get us in?" Kyle smiled, the confident expression of someone accustomed to getting what he wanted. "I know people. Plus, Hoomer Capital invested in the restaurant group that owns Luminaire. Connections matter in this city." The heavy glass doors opened into an opulent interior, exposed brick walls adorned with contemporary art, Edison bulb chandeliers casting warm amber light across tables draped in cream-colored linens. Jazz music played softly from hidden speakers as Seattle's elite conducted business deals and celebrated milestones in hushed, reverent tones. "Mr. Hoomer, Ms. Westfield, welcome to Luminaire." The hostess greeted them with a professional smile. "Your table is ready. The manager will be with you shortly to ensure everything is to your satisfaction." They followed her through the dining room, past tables occupied by recognizable faces, a Seahawks player, a city council member, the founder of a popular e-commerce platform. Kyle nodded at a few familiar faces, noting the envious glances directed at their coveted corner table with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the illuminated Seattle skyline. "Wine?" Brianna asked, settling into her chair and reaching for the leather-bound menu. "The 2016 Camus Cabernet," Kyle replied without hesitation, signaling their server. He'd been here twice before for business dinners, always impressed by the impeccable service and innovative Pacific Northwest cuisine. As their server poured ice water into crystal glasses, Kyle reached across the table and took Brianna's hand. "I'm glad we're doing this. You've been patient with my crazy schedule." Brianna's green eyes softened. "You're worth the wait. Though I have to admit, I'm hoping you'll start delegating more. 80-hour work weeks aren't sustainable." Before Kyle could respond, a woman's voice spoke from behind him, calm, professional, but carrying an unmistakable southern lilt that made Kyle's entire body go rigid. "Good evening. I'm the general manager here at Luminaire. I wanted to personally welcome you and ensure your dining experience exceeds expectations." The wine glass slipped from Kyle's fingers. It didn't shatter, but red wine splashed across the white tablecloth, spreading like blood across fresh snow. He turned slowly, his pulse thundering in his ears. Standing there in an impeccably tailored black suit, tablet in hand, and an expression of composed professionalism, was Amelie Chun, his ex-wife. The woman Kyle had divorced 3 years ago after choosing his company's Series C funding round over couples therapy. Amelie's dark hair was longer now, falling in gentle waves past her shoulders. Her features, high cheekbones, expressive brown eyes, full lips, were exactly as Kyle remembered them. But what made Kyle's breath catch wasn't the shock of seeing his ex-wife after 3 years of silence. It was the unmistakable swell of her belly beneath that perfectly cut suit jacket. "Kyle." Amelie's voice remained steady, though something flickered in her eyes, surprise, perhaps, or carefully controlled emotion. "I didn't realize you'd be dining with us tonight." "Amelie." Kyle's voice came out barely above a whisper. Brianna looked between them, confusion etching lines across her forehead. "Kyle, do you know the manager?" Amelie's lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. We know each other. We were married once. She turned her attention to Brianna, extending her hand with practiced grace. Amelie-chan, and you must be the girlfriend I've read about in Seattle Tech Review. Brianna Westfield, correct? Brianna shook Amelie's hand, her expression shifting from confusion to understanding to something harder. Actually, we're more serious than the articles suggest. Congratulations. Amelie's hand moved unconsciously to rest on her rounded belly, a protective gesture that sent a jolt through Kyle's chest. Now, about tonight's specials. Wait. Kyle found his voice, standing abruptly. His chair scraped against the hardwood floor, drawing glances from nearby tables. Amelie, you're pregnant? Yes. Amelie's expression remained neutral, professional. 6 months along. Now, as I was saying, our chef has prepared. 6 months. Kyle's mind raced, calculating dates with the precision that had made him successful in venture capital. They'd been divorced for 3 years. But 6 months pregnant meant. No, it couldn't be. Amelie seemed to read his thoughts. The baby isn't your concern, Kyle. Now, I have other tables to attend to. Your server will take excellent care of you. She turned to leave, her movements graceful despite her condition. Amelie, wait. Kyle reached out, but Amelie was already walking away, her posture straight and dignified. Kyle sank back into his chair, his heart hammering against his ribs. Across from him, Brianna's expression had transformed from warmth to ice. You were married? Brianna's voice was carefully controlled. And you never thought to mention that. But Kyle barely heard her. His eyes were fixed on Amelie's retreating figure, on the curve of her belly, on the wedding ring that was notably absent from her left hand. 6 months pregnant. Working as a restaurant manager instead of pursuing the culinary empire she'd always dreamed of building. What had happened to the woman Kyle had once promised to support through everything? And whose child was she carrying? The remainder of dinner was excruciating. Kyle mechanically responded to Brianna's pointed questions about his marriage, offering vague explanations that satisfied neither of them. His filet mignon might as well have been cardboard. Every few minutes, his eyes drifted across the dining room, searching for Amelie among the tables and staff. I think we should leave, Brianna said finally, setting down her fork with deliberate precision. She hadn't touched her halibut. Clearly, your mind is elsewhere. Kyle signaled for the check, guilt warring with the overwhelming need to find Amelie. As they stood to leave, he caught a glimpse of her through the kitchen's porthole window, gesturing to the sous chef, her profile highlighting the curve of her pregnancy. The drive back to Brianna's waterfront condo in Queen and was silent except for the hum of the Tesla's electric motor. When Kyle pulled up to her building, Brianna turned to him, her expression a mixture of disappointment and resignation. I need some space, Kyle. This is clearly unfinished business. She opened the door herself. Call me when you've figured out what, or who, you actually want. Kyle watched her disappear into the lobby, knowing he should feel worse about potentially losing her. Instead, all he could think about was Amelie's protective hand on her belly, the professional mask that had briefly slipped when their eyes met. Rather than heading to his penthouse in Belltown, Kyle found himself driving south, through Pioneer Square, past the stadiums, into the Georgetown neighborhood. He parked outside Amelie's Culinary Institute, the small cooking school she'd founded during their marriage. The building was dark, a for lease sign hanging crooked in the window. Kyle's chest tightened. Amelie had poured her heart into this place, teaching aspiring chefs while developing her own recipes. She'd dreamed of expanding into a full restaurant, writing cookbooks, maybe even a cooking show. He'd promised to support her vision. Then his Series C funding round had consumed 18 months of his life, and somewhere in that blur of investor meetings and product launches, he'd stopped showing up for her cooking school graduations, stopped tasting her new recipes, stopped asking about her dreams. The next morning, Kyle canceled his standing Monday executive meeting and made a call to his longtime friend and private investigator, Derek Liu. I need information on someone, Kyle said, staring out his office window at the Space Needle piercing the gray Seattle sky. Amelie-chan, my ex-wife. I need to know what happened after our divorce. Where she's living, why her cooking school closed, everything. Kyle, are you sure about this? Derek's voice carried concern. Looking into an ex's life rarely ends well. Just do it. Discretion is essential. His second call was to his attorney, Patricia Reeves, a sharp-minded family law specialist he'd used during the divorce. Hypothetically, Kyle began, if my ex-wife is pregnant, and there's a possibility, however remote, that I could be the father, what are my legal rights and obligations? Patricia's pause was telling. Kyle, is Amelie pregnant? Just answer the question. Well, if you were the father, you'd have both rights and responsibilities regarding custody, visitation, and child support. But establishing paternity would require either her cooperation or a court order. Why are you asking this? You've been divorced for 3 years. I know how long it's been. Kyle snapped, then immediately regretted his tone. Sorry, it's complicated. Over the next 72 hours, Kyle's attempts to contact Brianna went unanswered. His texts remained unread, his calls forwarded to voicemail. On the 4th morning, Derek delivered a comprehensive file to Kyle's office. Kyle read it with growing unease. After their divorce, Amelie had struggled financially. The cooking school, which Kyle had helped fund initially, couldn't sustain itself once his support ended. She'd taken out loans to keep it running, but enrollment had dropped during the pandemic and never recovered. The school had closed 8 months ago. She'd sold their shared vacation home in the San Juan Islands, the only asset she'd taken from the divorce, to pay off debts. For 6 months, she'd worked 3 part-time restaurant jobs before landing the general manager position at Luminaire 3 months ago. The report also revealed something Kyle hadn't expected. Amelie had been dating someone. Dr. Nathan Pierce, a cardiac surgeon at Swedish Medical Center. They'd been together for about 9 months before breaking up approximately 3 months ago. The timeline made Kyle's stomach clench. 9 months of dating, a breakup 3 months ago, and now she was 6 months pregnant. The math didn't add up. Unless. Kyle closed the file, anger and confusion swirling inside him. If the baby was Dr. Pierce's, why had Amelie looked so guarded when Kyle had asked about it? And why had she said it wasn't his concern rather than simply stating the father's identity? His office phone buzzed. Mr. Hoomer, you have a visitor. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's urgent. A Ms. Westfield. Kyle straightened his tie. Send her in. Brianna entered, dressed in a navy business suit, her expression composed but cool. She remained standing, declining his gesture toward the leather visitor's chair. I've been thinking, she began without preamble. About us. About what happened at Luminaire. Brianna, I can explain. She held up a hand. I did some research. About your ex-wife. About the scandal that destroyed her cooking school's reputation. Kyle's eyebrows rose. What scandal? You don't know? Brianna's expression showed surprise. There were allegations that she was involved with one of her married investors. Someone who'd promised to fund her restaurant expansion. When his wife found out, she launched a social media campaign that destroyed Amelie's professional credibility. Food bloggers picked it up. Students withdrew. Suppliers stopped working with her. Kyle felt like he'd been punched. Who was the investor? His name was redacted in most articles, but I have connections in the legal community. Brianna pulled out her phone, showing him a screenshot. Thomas Whitmore. He owns half the restaurant groups in Seattle, including the one that owns Luminaire. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Amelie hadn't taken this job because it was a great opportunity. She'd taken it because Whitmore had offered it, probably out of guilt or to keep her quiet about their affair. So she's working for the man who destroyed her reputation? Kyle's voice was hollow. It appears so. Brianna pocketed her phone. I'm telling you this because, despite everything, I think you should know the truth about what she's been through. But Kyle, her voice softened slightly. I can't be with someone who's still in love with his ex-wife. And you are. I saw it in your face the moment you heard her voice. Kyle didn't deny it. He couldn't. For what it's worth, Brianna continued, moving toward the door, I hope you figure out if that baby is yours. And if it is, I hope you do right by them this time. Don't make the same mistakes twice. After she left, Kyle sat in his office as afternoon shadows lengthened across Elliott Bay. He pulled up Luminaire's website, found the management page, and stared at Amelie's professional headshot. She looked composed, successful, every inch the accomplished general manager. But Kyle knew the truth now. She was barely surviving, working for the man who'd helped ruin her, carrying a child whose paternity remained a question mark. That evening, Kyle waited in the Luminaire parking garage, leaning against his car. He'd learned Amelie's shift ended at 10. At 10:17, she emerged from the service entrance, her coat pulled tight against the October chill, one hand protectively cradling her belly. She stopped short when she saw him. Kyle, are you stalking me now? We need to talk, Amelie. There's nothing to say. She started walking toward a modest Honda Civic, a far cry from the BMW convertible she'd driven during their marriage. Kyle fell into step beside her. I know about Thomas Whitmore. About what happened to your cooking school. Amelie froze, her keys halfway to the car door. How dare you investigate my life? I'm not judging you, Kyle said quickly. I'm worried about you. You're 6 months pregnant, working for a man who destroyed your career. Don't. Amelie's voice cracked. Don't pretend you care about my career. You made it very clear during our divorce that my little cooking school wasn't worth sacrificing your precious funding round for. The words hit like physical blows. Kyle had said exactly that during one of their worst fights. People change, Amelie. Priorities change. She laughed bitterly. Not you, Kyle. You're still the same driven man who chose board meetings over our anniversary, investor calls over my cooking school graduation, your company's growth over our marriage. She unlocked her car. Now leave me alone. The baby, Kyle said desperately. Is it mine? Amelie turned to face him fully, and in the harsh fluorescent light of the parking garage, he could see the exhaustion in her eyes, the dark circles beneath them. Why would you think that? The timeline. Kyle hesitated, remembering that final day in the lawyer's office, the bitter words that had somehow led to desperate kisses in his car, clothes hastily pushed aside, seeking comfort in each other one last time. That was 3 years ago, Kyle. I know, but 6 months pregnant means conception around April. And he couldn't finish the sentence. Amelie's expression was unreadable. Dr. Nathan Pierce is the father. We were together for 9 months. Amelie. Good night, Kyle. She got into her car, ending the conversation. But as she drove away, Kyle noticed something that made his heart race. She wasn't wearing the vintage Cartier bracelet Nathan Pierce had given her. He'd seen it in one of the photos from Derek's report. Instead, on her right wrist, barely visible beneath her coat sleeve, was the simple silver bracelet Kyle had given her on their first anniversary. The one engraved with A+K, always. She was lying. Kyle was certain of it, and he was going to prove it. Kyle's investigation began in earnest the next morning. He hired a second private investigator, one Derek didn't know about, with specific instructions: find Dr. Nathan Pierce and discover the truth about his relationship with Amelie. The report came back within 48 hours, and it confirmed Kyle's suspicions. Dr. Pierce had indeed dated Amelie for 9 months, but their relationship had ended 4 months ago, not 3. More importantly, Pierce had been out of the country on a medical mission in Guatemala during the window when Amelie would have conceived. The surgeon had spent 6 weeks performing cardiac surgeries in rural clinics, with timestamps and documentation proving he couldn't possibly be the father. Kyle sat in his office, the report spread across his mahogany desk, hands trembling slightly as the reality sank in. Amelie had lied about the paternity, which meant there was only one other possibility. He was going to be a father. The thought sent a wave of emotions crashing over him. Terror, wonder, guilt, and something else he couldn't quite name. For years, he'd convinced himself that children didn't fit into his 5-year plan, that they would distract from building his empire. He'd dismissed Amelie's gentle suggestions about starting a family, always pushing the conversation till later, when the company is more stable. Now, later had arrived without his permission, and the woman carrying his child wanted nothing to do with him. Kyle made a decision. He needed to confront Amelie, but not with accusations. He needed to prove he'd changed, that he could be the partner and father she deserved. His first call was to his CFO. Clear my calendar for the next 2 weeks. Cancel the Singapore investor meetings, postpone the board presentation, delegate the product launch oversight to Jennifer. Kyle, are you serious? The Singapore deal is worth $40 million. I'm serious. It's time I started living like success actually matters for something beyond the next funding round. His second call was to Thomas Whitmore. Mr. Whitmore, this is Kyle Hoomer from Hoomer Capital Ventures. I understand your restaurant group has been exploring expansion opportunities in the Pacific Northwest Tech Corridor. 20 minutes later, Kyle had arranged a meeting, not to invest, though he'd let Whitmore believe that initially, but to understand exactly what hold this man had over Amelie. That evening, Kyle returned to Luminaire. He didn't make a reservation. Instead, he waited in the lobby until Amelie emerged from her office, tablet in hand, heading toward the kitchen. Kyle. Her voice was sharp with warning. You can't keep showing up at my workplace. I know about Dr. Pierce, he said quietly. I know he was in Guatemala when you conceived. Amelie's face went pale. You had him investigated too? Is there anyone's privacy you won't violate? The baby is mine, isn't it? Amelie looked around at the staff moving through the restaurant, then grabbed Kyle's arm and pulled him into a small private office off the main dining room. She shut the door, leaning against it as if to block his escape, or hers. Fine. Yes. She's yours. The admission came out defiant, not apologetic. Happy now. Kyle felt his knees go weak. He sank into the chair beside her desk. It's a girl. Amelie's hand moved to her belly in that now familiar protective gesture. And before you start making demands about custody and visitation and whatever legal rights you think you have, let me be very clear. I don't want your money, and I don't need your help. Why didn't you tell me? Kyle's voice was hoarse. Because I know you, Kyle. I know exactly what would happen. You'd throw money at the problem, fancy doctors, expensive baby gear, a trust fund. You'd show up for the Instagram-worthy moments, the first day of school photos, the birthday parties. But when she needs someone to hold her when she's sick at 3 a.m., when she has a school play on the same day as your investor meeting, when she wants her father to actually be present, not just providing. Amelie's eyes filled with tears. You'd choose the meeting, just like you always did. The accusation cut deep because Kyle couldn't deny it. He had chosen meetings over their marriage, over Amelie's needs, over everything that actually mattered. You're right, he said simply, about who I was. But Amelie, that final day, in my car after signing the divorce papers, that wasn't just goodbye for me. It was the moment I realized what I'd lost, what I'd thrown away for stock options and board seats. Pretty words, Kyle. You always had those. Then let me prove it with actions. He stood, moving closer but respecting her space. Give me 6 months. Let me show you I've changed, that I can be the father our daughter deserves. And what happens after 6 months when you realize that fatherhood is exhausting and inconvenient? When your company needs you and you have to choose. Then you'll have your answer, and I'll respect whatever boundaries you set. He pulled a folded document from his jacket. I've already started. This is a revised custody proposal. I'm not demanding 50-50. I'm asking for supervised visits, for the chance to be involved in doctor appointments, birthing classes, preparing for her arrival. Amelie took the document, scanning it with obvious suspicion. What's the catch? No catch. Except one condition. You let me help you get out from under Thomas Whitmore. Her expression hardened. I don't know what you think you know about my arrangement with Thomas. I know he destroyed your cooking school's reputation to cover up his own infidelity. I know he offered you this job out of guilt or to keep you quiet. And I know you deserve better than working for the man who ruined your dream. Kyle's voice was steady. I'm meeting with him tomorrow. I'm going to invest in his restaurant group, but with conditions. One of them is that he sells Luminaire to an independent operator, one who will recognize your talent and give you the creative freedom you deserve. Kyle, you can't just. I can. And I will. Not as a grand gesture to win you back, but because it's the right thing to do. Because I should have fought for your dreams 3 years ago, and I'm finally doing it now. He moved toward the door. Think about my proposal. You don't have to decide tonight. Kyle, wait. He turned back. Amelie's expression had softened slightly, though suspicion still lingered in her eyes. Why now? Why do you suddenly care about being a father, about my career, about any of this? Kyle considered the question, then decided on complete honesty. Because seeing you at that table, pregnant, and serving in a restaurant when you should be running your own culinary empire, made me realize something. Success without the people you love isn't success at all. It's just expensive loneliness. He paused. And because our daughter deserves a father who's actually present. I can't change the past, but I can choose differently now. After a long moment, Amelie nodded slowly. 6 months. But I'm keeping this job until you've actually done what you promised about Whitmore. And if you miss even one appointment, one class, if you prioritize work over this even once, we're done. Permanently. Agreed. And Kyle. Amelie's voice stopped him at the door. Don't make me regret giving you this chance. I won't let you break our daughter's heart the way you broke mine. The words stung, but Kyle accepted them. He had a lot to prove, and only 6 months to do it. As he walked out of Luminaire into the cool Seattle night, Kyle felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Purpose that had nothing to do with profit margins or market share. For the first time since building his empire, he was working towards something that actually mattered. He just hoped he wasn't too late to get it right. The following weeks transformed Kyle's life in ways he hadn't anticipated. True to his word, he restructured his entire schedule around Amelie's pregnancy. The first prenatal appointment was on a Thursday afternoon at Seattle Maternal Health Center. Kyle arrived 15 minutes early, dressed in business casual rather than his usual suit, holding 2 cups of decaf coffee, one with almond milk and honey, exactly how Amelie used to take it. She arrived exactly on time, surprise flickering across her face when she saw him in the waiting room. "You actually came," she said, accepting the coffee with visible hesitation. "I said I would." Kyle stood, noticing how she instinctively kept distance between them. "I'm here for every appointment, Amelie. No exceptions." The ultrasound technician called them back, and Kyle experienced something he'd never felt in any boardroom or investor pitch. Pure, overwhelming awe. There on the screen, their daughter moved and stretched, her tiny profile clearly visible. "She's measuring perfectly," the technician said, pointing out features. "Strong heartbeat, good growth. Would you like to know the estimated due date?" "January 14th, Amelie said quietly. "We already know." Kyle watched the screen, transfixed. "She has your nose." Despite herself, Amelie smiled. "It's too early to tell that." "I can tell." Kyle's voice was thick with emotion. "She's beautiful, just like her mother." Amelie's expression shifted, guarded again. "Don't, Kyle." Over the next month, Kyle attended every appointment without fail. He showed up to the birthing class at Swedish Medical Center, where he was the only CEO sitting cross-legged on a yoga mat, practicing breathing techniques with a rubber doll. The other expectant fathers recognized him. One even asked for investment advice during the break, but Kyle deflected, keeping his focus entirely on learning how to support Amelie during labor. "You're taking this seriously," Amelie observed one evening after class, as they walked to the parking garage. "Did you think I wouldn't?" "Honestly, yes." She paused beside her Honda. "I thought you'd send an assistant or find excuses after the first few weeks." "I meant what I said, Amelie. This is my priority now." He hesitated. "How are you feeling?" "Really?" She looked tired, dark circles visible beneath her eyes despite the healthy glow of pregnancy. "Exhausted. The restaurant hours are brutal, and my back is killing me. But I'm managing. Let me hire you a massage therapist. Prenatal massage is supposed to help with." "Kyle, we talked about this. No grand gestures." "It's not a gesture. It's practical healthcare." He softened his tone. "Please, let me help." After a moment, she nodded. "Fine, but nothing extravagant." True to his promise about Thomas Whitmore, Kyle had moved forward with his investment strategy. He'd met with Whitmore twice, carefully laying groundwork for a substantial capital infusion into the restaurant group. During the second meeting, Kyle had casually mentioned his interest in seeing fresh leadership at Luminaire. "The current management seems solid," Whitmore had said, slightly defensive. "It is. Which is exactly why Amelie Chen deserves to run her own establishment rather than managing someone else's vision." Kyle had kept his tone casual. "Part of my investment terms would include funding for her to launch an independent venture. You keep Luminaire. She gets her own restaurant. Everyone wins." Whitmore had looked uncomfortable. "That's complicated." "Most things worth doing are." Kyle had leaned back in his chair. "I've done my research, Thomas. I know what happened with the cooking school. This is your chance to make it right." Now, 6 weeks into his transformation, Kyle sat in his office reviewing architectural plans. Not for a new Hoomer Capitol building, but for a restaurant space in Capitol Hill, a former bakery with good bones and excellent foot traffic. He'd already contacted 3 commercial real estate attorneys about securing the lease under Amelie's name. His assistant buzzed. "Mr. Hoomer, Miss Chun is here. She doesn't have an appointment." Kyle's pulse quickened. "Send her in immediately." Amelie entered, her pregnancy more pronounced now at 7 months. She held a folder, her expression unreadable. "We need to talk," she said without preamble. Kyle gestured to the sitting area by the window, away from his desk's power dynamics. "What's wrong?" "Thomas Whitmore called me this morning. He said you've been pressuring him to fund a new restaurant for me. He also mentioned you're threatening to pull a $20 million investment if he doesn't comply." She set the folder on the coffee table between them. "Kyle, what are you doing? I told you I'd help you get out from under him. By blackmailing him into giving me a restaurant? That's not help, Kyle. That's control." Her voice rose slightly. That's you deciding what's best for me without asking what I actually want. Kyle felt the familiar defensiveness rise, but forced himself to pause. Dr. Morrison, the therapist he'd started seeing 3 weeks ago, had warned him about this exact tendency. You're right, he said finally. I got so focused on fixing the problem that I didn't stop to ask if you wanted it fixed that way. I'm sorry. Amelie blinked, clearly not expecting the apology. Oh, what do you want, Amelie? Not what I think you should want, but what you actually want for your career. She sat down slowly, one hand resting on her belly. I want my own restaurant. Eventually. But on my terms, not because someone guilt-tripped an investor into funding it. And not right now. I'm about to have a baby. I can't launch a restaurant and be a new mother simultaneously. That's fair. Kyle sat across from her. What if we did this differently? I'll back off Whitmore entirely. You keep working at Luminaire as long as you want. But when you're ready, 6 months after the baby, a year, whenever, I'll help you secure funding for your own place. Not as a gift, but as a legitimate investment. You'll have full creative control, and you'll pay me back like any other investor. Amelie studied him carefully. Why would you do that? Because you're talented. Because your dream deserves to happen. And because our daughter should grow up watching her mother build something amazing, not working for the man who tried to destroy her. Our daughter. Amelie repeated the word softly. You keep saying that. Because it's true. She's ours. And I want her to have parents who support each other, even if we're not together. Amelie's eyes glistened. I wasn't expecting this version of you. Neither was I, honestly. Kyle managed a small smile. Therapy helps. Dr. Morrison is good at pointing out when I'm being a controlling asshole. Despite herself, Amelie laughed. You're seeing a therapist? Twice a week. Turns out I have some issues with using work to avoid emotional vulnerability. Who knew? His tone was self-deprecating. I'm also reading every parenting book I can find. Did you know babies need tummy time? I had no idea what that even meant 3 weeks ago. Amelie's expression softened further. What happened to you, Kyle? This change, it's not just for show, is it? No, it's not. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Losing you was the worst mistake of my life. I knew it then, but I didn't know how to change. Building companies, making deals, that was easy compared to being vulnerable with another person. So I just kept working, kept achieving, kept telling myself success would eventually feel like enough. He met her eyes. It never did. And now I'm terrified I'll screw this up. That I'll fall back into old patterns. That I'll let our daughter down the way I let you down. His voice roughened. But I'm trying, Amelie. Every single day, I'm choosing differently. Amelie was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was gentle. I can see that. The appointments, the classes, backing off when I asked you to, these aren't small things. I have a long way to go, but I'm committed to the journey. He paused. Speaking of which, I have something to show you. If you're open to it. 15 minutes later, they stood outside the former bakery in Capitol Hill. Kyle unlocked the door, revealing a spacious interior with exposed brick, original hardwood floors, and large windows facing the street. This is just an option, Kyle said quickly. No pressure. But when you're ready, if you're ready, this space is available. The owner is a friend. He'll hold it for you. No commitment required. Amelie walked through the empty space, her footsteps echoing. She traced her fingers along the brick wall, stood in the center of what would be the dining room, gazed out the windows at the bustling neighborhood. It's perfect, she whispered. The kitchen space alone is bigger than my entire cooking school. There's an office upstairs and a small apartment that could be used for storage or staff housing. Kyle stayed near the door, letting her explore. But like I said, no pressure. This is for whenever you're ready. Amelie turned to face him, backlit by the afternoon sun streaming through the windows. Thank you for understanding that I need to do this on my own timeline. Our daughter is going to need her mother happy and fulfilled, not burned out and resentful. Whatever timeline works for you works for me. As they locked up and headed back to their cars, Amelie said quietly, I'm starting to believe you might actually mean all of this. I do. And I'll keep proving it, Amelie. However long it takes. The call came at 2:15 in the morning on January 12th, 2 days before Amelie's due date. Kyle bolted upright in bed, fumbling for his phone. Amelie, my water broke. Her voice was calm but tight with pain. Contractions are 7 minutes apart. I'm heading to Swedish Medical Center. I'm on my way. Don't drive yourself. I already called a car service. Just meet me there. Kyle threw on clothes, grabbed the hospital bag he'd packed weeks ago, filled with items from the birthing class checklist, and broke every speed limit getting to the hospital. He found Amelie in triage, already changed into a hospital gown, breathing through a contraction while a nurse monitored her vitals. "You made it," Amelie said when the contraction passed, surprise evident in her voice. "I told you I'd be here." Kyle took her hand carefully. "What can I do?" The next 14 hours tested every breathing technique, every supportive phrase, every ounce of patience Kyle had developed over the past 6 months. Amelie labored with fierce determination, squeezing his hand through contractions, letting him apply counterpressure to her lower back, accepting ice chips when he offered them. "I can't do this," she gasped during a particularly brutal contraction in hour 11. "You can," Kyle said firmly, exactly as they'd practiced. "You're doing it. You're the strongest person I know." That's, she gritted her teeth, such a cliché line. It's also true. At 4:37 p.m., after one final pushing session that left them both exhausted and tearful, Lily Rose Hoomer entered the world. The nurse placed her on Amelie's chest, and Kyle cut the umbilical cord with shaking hands, tears streaming freely down his face. "She's here," Amelie whispered, staring at their daughter with wonder. "She's really here." Lily had a shock of dark hair, Amelie's delicate features, and when she finally opened her eyes after several minutes, they were the same gray-blue as Kyle's. "Hi, sweetheart," Kyle murmured, touching one tiny fist with his finger. Lily's hand immediately wrapped around it with surprising strength. "I'm your dad. I'm so glad to finally meet you." In the quiet hours that followed, as Amelie dozed and Lily slept in the bassinet beside her bed, Kyle sat in the uncomfortable chair and simply watched them both. His phone buzzed repeatedly, board members, investors, his CFO asking about the quarterly review, but he silenced it without reading the messages. Nothing mattered except this room, this moment, these two people who'd changed his entire understanding of what success actually meant. The next morning, Kyle woke to find Amelie attempting to nurse Lily, frustration evident on her exhausted face. "She's not latching right," Amelie said, close to tears. "The lactation consultant was here, but I still can't." "Let me call the nurse," Kyle said, already standing. "You're not doing this alone." 20 minutes and one patient lactation consultant later, Lily was nursing successfully, and Amelie looked less defeated. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for not making me feel incompetent. You just grew and delivered a human being. You're anything but incompetent." Kyle sat on the edge of the bed carefully. "We'll figure this out together. All of it." That afternoon, as visiting hours opened, Kyle's mother arrived with flowers and a knitted blanket. She cooed over Lily, hugged Amelie warmly, and pulled Kyle aside in the hallway. "I'm proud of you," she said simply. "Your father would be too." Kyle's throat tightened. His father had died of a heart attack at 52, working until the very end. Kyle had always thought he'd honor his father's memory by building an even bigger empire. Now he wondered if his father might have made different choices, given a second chance. "I'm trying to do better than he did," Kyle said. "Better than I did the first time around." "You are." His mother squeezed his hand. "That little girl is lucky to have you." On the third day, as they prepared for discharge, Kyle broached the subject he'd been avoiding. "Where are you planning to go?" "Back to your apartment in Georgetown." Amelie adjusted Lily's car seat straps. "Yes. What? That neighborhood isn't safe for a newborn. And you'll be recovering, doing night feedings alone." He caught himself. "Sorry, I'm doing it again. The controlling thing." "A little," Amelie admitted. "But you're not wrong. I've been worried about the same things." Kyle took a breath. "The Cambridge townhouse is still available. You'd have your own space, a proper nursery, a safe neighborhood. And I could be close by to help without being intrusive. Separate floors, separate lives, but nearby for the middle-of-the-night emergencies." Amelie was quiet, looking down at Lily sleeping peacefully in her car seat. "Just for the first few months," Kyle continued. "Until you're recovered and we've figured out a routine. If you hate it, you can leave anytime. No strings attached." "There are always strings, Kyle." "Not this time. This is about Lily having what she needs. And right now, she needs her mother healthy and supported." He paused. "Please, Amelie, let me do this one thing right." After a long moment, Amelie nodded. 3 months. We'll reassess after that." The first weeks were harder than Kyle had imagined. Lily woke every 2 hours, crying with hunger or discomfort or for reasons neither of them could decipher. Kyle learned to change diapers at 3 a.m., to heat bottles to precisely the right temperature, to walk endless laps around the townhouse with a fussy baby against his shoulder. He also learned to step back when Amelie needed space, to anticipate needs without being asked, to be present without hovering. "You're getting good at this," Amelie observed one morning, watching him burp Lily with practiced confidence. "I had a good teacher," Kyle said, nodding toward her. On Lily's 6-week birthday, Kyle came home from a deliberately shortened workday to find Amelie crying at the kitchen table, Lily asleep in her arms. "What's wrong?" He set down his briefcase immediately. "Nothing. Everything. I don't know." Amelie wiped her eyes. "I'm just so tired, and I try to go back to work at Luminaire part-time, but being away from her feels wrong, and I don't know who I am anymore if I'm not working," and she broke off, crying harder. Kyle gently took Lily, settling her in the bassinet, then sat beside Amelie and pulled her into his arms. She stiffened initially, then collapsed against him, sobbing into his shoulder. "You're doing an amazing job," he murmured. "But you don't have to do it all. Let me help more. You're already helping so much. You haven't missed a single night feeding. Because I want to be here, not out of obligation." He pulled back slightly to look at her. "Amelie, I meant what I said 6 months ago. This is my priority. Not the company, not the deals. You and Lily. But your business is running fine with competent people I should have delegated to years ago." Kyle smiled. "Turns out the company doesn't actually need me working 80-hour weeks. It just needed me to trust my team and stop trying to control everything." Amelie laughed through her tears. "Who are you, and what did you do with Kyle Hoomer?" "I'm still figuring that out myself. But I know I'm a better version than I was." That evening, after Amelie had gone to bed early and Kyle was doing the 10 p.m. feeding, he looked down at Lily's face. Her tiny features relaxed in contentment as she drank her bottle and felt something shift inside him. This was what mattered. Not the Forbes lists or the funding rounds or the corner office view. This small human who depended on him completely, who didn't care about his net worth or his business acumen, who just needed him to show up and be present. The 3-month mark arrived quietly. Kyle had expected Amelie to announce her departure, to reclaim her independence. Instead, one evening as they gave Lily a bath together, a routine they'd fallen into without discussion, Amelie said quietly, "I've been thinking about the restaurant space." Kyle kept his focus on supporting Lily's head in the warm water. "Yeah, I'd like to start planning it. Not opening immediately, but designing the concept, developing the menu. Maybe soft launch in 18 months when Lily's older." She glanced at him. "If your investment offer still stands." "It does. Absolutely. With full creative control. No interference. Your restaurant, your vision. I'm just the money guy." He smiled. "Though I'd appreciate occasional meals there. I hear the chef is exceptional." Over the following months, Kyle watched Amelie blossom. She hired an architect for the Capitol Hill space, developed menu concepts during Lily's naps, and began reaching out to former cooking school students about potential staff positions. The creative spark he'd fallen in love with years ago had reignited. One evening in late spring, as they sat on the townhouse patio watching Lily attempt to crawl across a blanket, Amelie said, "I need to tell you something." Kyle's stomach tightened. "Okay." "These past months, living here, co-parenting, building toward the restaurant, I've realized something." She turned to face him fully. "You really have changed, Kyle. This isn't an act or a temporary adjustment. You've fundamentally shifted your priorities. I told you I would. I know, but I didn't fully believe it until now." She took a breath. "I'm not saying I want to get back together. We have years of work ahead to rebuild that kind of trust. But I'm saying I believe in you as Lily's father. And maybe, eventually, as my partner again. If that's something you still want." Kyle felt his eyes sting. "It's the only thing I've wanted since the moment I saw you at Luminaire." "Then let's take it slow. Keep doing what we're doing, co-parenting, supporting each other, building our individual lives while staying connected." She smiled. "And maybe, when the restaurant opens and Lily's a little older, we can try an actual date. No history, no pressure. Just two people seeing if they still fit together." "I'd like that," Kyle said softly. Lily chose that moment to successfully crawl forward 3 whole movements before collapsing on her belly with a frustrated squeal. They both laughed, and Kyle scooped up his daughter, lifting her high. That's my girl. Never give up. As the evenings settled around them, Amelie sketching menu ideas, Lily babbling happily on Kyle's lap, the Seattle skyline glowing in the distance. Kyle realized this was what he'd been chasing his entire adult life. Not success measured in dollars or deals, but in these quiet moments of connection, in building something that mattered beyond quarterly reports. He'd lost Amelie once by choosing ambition over love. This time, he was choosing differently. And slowly, carefully, they were building something new from the ashes of what they'd lost, something stronger, more honest, more real. Sometimes the best second chances came from the most unexpected reunions. And sometimes, the greatest success was simply showing up, day after day, for the people who mattered most. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.